What happens when an elderly veteran simply shares a sandwich with a homeless man? He had no idea that this small act of kindness would trigger a chain of humiliation, deception, and legal betrayal. What happened next drove hundreds to take to the streets demanding justice. It started with a sandwich, a warm pastrami on rye with just a smear of mustard. Nothing fancy, but it meant something. It meant I still gave a damn. I'm Arthur Blaine, 73, veteran, retired machinist, and recently, according to my own family, a threat to myself. Why? Because I handed a sandwich to a man they called one of those people. You know, the kind they cross the street to avoid, the kind who remind them that life isn't always tied up in clean cul-de-sacs and retirement plans. But let me back up. It was Tuesday. The air was brisk, the kind that bites just enough to remind you you're alive. I walked the 6 blocks to Miller's Deli, like I do every week. Picked up 2 sandwiches, one for me, one for Frank. He's a homeless vet who sleeps near the old bus depot. Lost his leg in Nam, lost his home in 2008, and lost everyone else since. The city walks past him like he's part of the bench. Not me. I sat beside him that morning, handed over his sandwich like always, and we talked about stupid things. Baseball. The damn mayor. How the coffee at Miller's used to taste better. And for a moment, it felt like the world hadn't thrown him away. That's when the storm started. I got home, and the driveway was full. My son Jason's SUV, my daughter-in-law Becky's hybrid. Even my teenage grandson Zach's dented Civic was parked at a tilt, like the damn thing had crashed into the rose bushes and just stayed there. I walked through my own front door and felt like a trespasser. They were sitting around the table like they were planning a funeral. "Dad," Jason said, standing up with that forced smile people wear when they're about to stab you with kindness. "We've been meaning to talk." I sat, not because I wanted to, but because my knees were already aching from the walk. Becky slid a folder across the table like it was a menu. Inside, brochures. Independent living communities. Enhanced care facilities. Supportive homes for aging adults. I closed it slowly. "So, I help one guy eat, and now I'm getting shipped off to the land of bingo and pill organizers?" Jason sighed. "You've been acting erratically." "Erratically?" I laughed. "Is that what we're calling empathy now?" Becky cleared her throat, like she was preparing to recite a Bible verse. "It's not just that. We've noticed other things. You left the stove on last month." "I was boiling water, Becky." "You forget names." "I called the neighbor's cat Steve once. It's a damn cat." "You gave money to a man sleeping on the sidewalk. He's a veteran, not a stray dog." Jason leaned in. "We're worried about your judgment." I looked at him. My own son. This was the kid who used to wet the bed until he was 10, who cried when his goldfish died, who once broke a neighbor's window and blamed it on the wind. And now he's standing there, judging me? "That man," I said quietly, "served his country. He took a bullet in the leg so your mother could give birth to you in a free hospital. And you're sitting here telling me I'm senile because I bought him lunch?" Jason didn't flinch. "It's more complicated than that." "No, son," I said. "It's exactly that simple." The next day, the doctor's call came. Some stranger, Dr. Evans, who I hadn't met, hadn't spoken to, hadn't even waved at through a window, decided I was exhibiting early signs of cognitive decline based on Jason's report. Not even an in-person evaluation, just Jason's one-sided sob story, dressed up as concern. I sat there staring at my landline like it was possessed. My coffee went cold, my sandwich untouched. I wasn't hungry anymore. I was humiliated. Then came the kicker. Legal paperwork in the mail. Jason had started the process to legally take control of my decisions. My bank accounts, my property, my house, my life. He called later. Casual. Like we were talking about lawn care. Dad, you'll be happier with people your own age. Structured support. Medical professionals nearby. You mean I'll be easier to manage? Silence. He didn't deny it. Of course he didn't. I realized then they didn't want me to be safe. They wanted me to be silent, tucked away, out of sight and out of mind, because I reminded them of something they didn't want to face. That one day, they'll be old too, and maybe someone will try to erase them just for giving a damn. Later that week, they came over again. Becky brought cookies, the kind she buys and puts on a tray like she baked them herself. Jason smiled like a man trying to sell insurance. We're just here to check in. You already checked out, I muttered. What was that? Nothing. They toured the house like real estate agents, noted the rugs I might trip on, the medicine bottles that should be more secure, the pictures on the wall that might confuse me. Then Becky opened the fridge. Do you really need this much mustard? That's when I lost it. Do you really need that much Botox? She slammed the door. Jason sighed. Zach stood by the doorway, eyes wide, silent. No one said a word for a full 10 seconds. Then Jason dropped the final card. We're making the decision for you, Dad. It's already in motion. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my recliner, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow and steady. I thought about my wife, gone 6 years now. I wondered what she'd say. Probably something like, "Raise hell, Artie." So I will. That was only the beginning. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. You ever get the feeling people are waiting for you to vanish? Not die. That would be too messy, too emotional. No, I mean vanish. Quietly, politely, like a polite old man folding himself into a nursing home brochure and disappearing between the pages. Well, that's what my family wanted. Problem is, I've never been very good at doing what's expected of me. It started 2 days after Jason's little "We're doing what's best for you" speech, which, by the way, is always the opening act for a disaster. I was sitting in my recliner, coffee in one hand, TV remote in the other, watching a rerun of Matlock. Not because I like it, but because sometimes you want to remind yourself that even an old man in a cheap suit can outwit a system built to crush people. Ironic, right? Then I heard it. The door. Keys. My keys. Turning in the lock. I stood up fast. Too fast. My back wasn't happy about it, but I made it to the door just as it opened. Becky stepped in, holding a cardboard box. Jason was behind her, all stiff-jawed and righteous, like a man who's read exactly one book on how to talk to your aging parent. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I barked. Becky blinked. "We're just clearing out a few things to make the transition easier." "Transition to what? The grave?" Jason winced. "Dad, don't be dramatic." "I'm not dramatic. I'm livid. That's different." He tried to smile. Failed. "We talked about this." "No, you talked. I listened. That's not a conversation. That's a hostage situation." They froze. "You can't just come in here like you own the place." Jason had the nerve to look confused. "We do own it. Technically. It's in the family trust." That one hit like a punch in the ribs. I'd signed that damn document years ago when my wife passed, and Jason convinced me it would simplify taxes. I didn't realize it would also simplify erasing me. That afternoon, they started boxing up my things like I was already gone. My books, my tools, even the photos. the black and white ones of me and my wife on Coney Island, laughing like fools in the wind. Becky looked at them like they were dusty junk. "I'll take this to storage," she said. "You touch those, I'll flatten your tires." She blinked, unsure if I was joking. Spoiler? I wasn't. Jason sat me down like a school principal, tried to explain how change is hard and emotions run high. I stared at him. This was the same kid who once cried because his goldfish crackers were too orange. Now he was talking to me like I was a toddler. "You're not thinking clearly," he said again. That was his favorite line lately. "Just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I'm confused. It means you're wrong." He didn't like that. He left with his jaw clenched and his wife tugging at his arm like a leash. That night, I had a visitor. Zach, 16 years old, full of awkward silences and messy hair. My grandson. He knocked at the back door like we were part of some spy movie. When I let him in, he just stood there with his hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets, looking uncomfortable. "You okay, Grandpa?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to lie. But I didn't. "No, Zach, I'm not. Your parents are trying to put me away because I bought someone a sandwich and I don't act like a corpse in khakis." He nodded slowly. "They say you're not safe." "Safe from what? Sandwiches?" He chuckled. Then he sat down. "They think you're too kind, too trusting." I stared at him. "Is that a crime now?" He didn't answer. Then he pulled something out of his backpack. A voice recorder. "I want to hear your story. Everything. I don't think they're listening." That's when something in me stirred. Maybe I couldn't stop them through paperwork or lawyers, but maybe, just maybe, I could leave a record, a legacy, something louder than their silence. We talked for hours. I told him about Frank, about the look in Jason's eyes when he handed me the guardianship papers, about the way Becky said facility like it was some kind of blessing, not a cage. Zach listened, really listened. No phone in hand, no distractions, just quiet respect. And when he left, he said something I'll never forget. "They're wrong, Grandpa. You're the most awake person I know." The next day, a letter arrived. From a lawyer, Jason's lawyer. It was official now. I was being declared incompetent. A judge would decide within the month whether I could continue living in my own house. Let me tell you something. There's nothing quite like being told you're not fit to live your own life, that you don't get to decide when to open your windows or make a cup of tea, that your memories, your voice, your dignity, they're all subject to approval. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I brewed another pot of coffee. I sat at the table, and I began writing. Everything. Every lie they told. Every kindness they dismissed. Every time Jason used the words, "for your own good," like a weapon. Because I'm not going quietly. If they want to fight, they just found out the old man still has teeth. This is the climax. Everything you've waited for. It starts right here. Don't miss what happens when the old man finally turns the tables. There's something funny about people who plan your life without inviting you to the meeting. They'll smile in your face, pat your hand like you're their childhood dog, and say things like, "We're just trying to help." But what they're really doing is writing your ending, quietly, comfortably, without your consent. Well, guess what? I still had a pen, and I wasn't signing off on anything. The morning after the lawyer's letter arrived, I brewed a stronger than usual pot of coffee, shaved with extra care, and put on the suit I hadn't touched since my wife's funeral. The sleeves were a bit looser, the collar scratched at my neck, but I didn't care. I needed to look like something no one in my family expected. In control. I stepped outside and felt the air bite through the cloth like truth through bullshit. It was a good day for war. First stop, the courthouse. I didn't hire a lawyer, couldn't afford one, but I knew how to speak. I'd fought union bosses in the 70s with nothing but my voice and logic. This wasn't new. This was muscle memory. The clerk looked at me like I was lost. I told her I needed to file an objection to the guardianship motion. "Are you currently represented by counsel?" she asked. "No, ma'am. Just rage and principle." She blinked, then smiled. I filled out the form slowly, making sure every letter was neat, like I was carving it into stone. Because that's what this was. A refusal to be erased. Then I went to see someone I hadn't seen in a long time. Her name was Dolores. She was my wife's best friend, widowed, tough, and the one person who always called Becky a polished plague. She opened the door wearing bright red lipstick and a bathrobe that had definitely seen better decades. "Arthur Blaine," she said, hands on hips. "If this is a romantic visit, you should know I'm still emotionally unavailable." I smirked. "I need your mouth, Dolores." She laughed so hard I thought her wig would fly off. "Not like that," I added. "I need someone who can speak, loud, publicly." She invited me in. I laid it out. The sandwich, the family ambush, the fake doctor report, the guardianship. Dolores didn't say much at first, just listened. Then she stood, went to her bedroom, and came back with a manila folder. Inside, every local reporter's contact information from her old days on the city council. "I've been waiting for a reason to raise hell," she said, eyes gleaming. I felt something stir in my chest. Not a heart attack, thank God, but something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next 3 days were a blur of calls, messages, and quiet strategy. Zach helped me digitize everything. My bank statements, medical records, the voicemail Jason left where he said, "It's better if we just handle it ourselves before Dad gets worse." We cut together a short video, me talking about the situation, with Dolores narrating background facts. We didn't cry, we didn't beg, we just told the truth. Then Zach posted it online. And oh boy, the internet loves a good injustice, especially when it involves an old man who's more coherent than half of Congress. The video went viral locally, then nationally. People commented things like, "This man is sharper than my boss." My dad went through this. We stayed silent. I regret it every day. Protect Mr. Blaine at all costs. I wasn't ready for the wave that followed. Reporters showed up on my lawn. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years brought casseroles and apologies. A young woman from the mayor's office came by, looking pale, asking if there was anything the city could do to support. And then Becky called. Oh, that was sweet. "Arthur," she started, syrupy, "we're so sorry this got out of hand." I leaned back in my chair, watching a squirrel fight a crow over a crust of bread. "It didn't get out of hand, Becky. It got out of your hands." She stammered something about miscommunication, about stress, about Jason's blood pressure. I told her calmly, "You tried to bury me alive in paperwork. Now you're watching me climb out of the grave with receipts." She hung up. Jason showed up in person. Suit, tie, a face like wet cardboard. He stood on my porch like he was running for office, hands folded, eyes fake soft. "Dad, can we talk?" I opened the door wide. "You talking as my son, or my self-appointed legal guardian?" He flinched. "As your son." "Well, that's a start." He came in, sat down, and actually looked at me. "I didn't realize how this would feel to you." "No," I said. "You didn't bother to think about how it would feel. That's different." He swallowed hard. "You're right," he said finally. We treated you like a problem, not a person. A part of me wanted to forgive him right there. But the louder part of me, the one that had been silenced, belittled, boxed, and ignored, that part said, "Words are easy. Undoing damage isn't." We sat in silence, not angry, not warm, just real. Later that night, I poured myself a small glass of scotch and sat by the window. The moon was bright, the street quiet, and I thought, maybe I'm not just surviving. Maybe I'm living again. Not because they gave me permission, but because I refused to give it up. You've come this far. Now you have to see how it all ends. Chapter 4 is the final piece, and it might just be the part you'll remember forever. Didn't plan to become a symbol. I didn't set out to go viral. I wasn't trying to be anyone's crusader. All I wanted was to drink my coffee in peace and maybe feed a man who had less than I did. But the world doesn't like quiet dignity. It pokes it again, until you're forced to stand up and roar, just to remind them you're still alive. The courthouse was packed, not with strangers, with neighbors, ex-co-workers, veterans I hadn't seen in decades. Some of them walked slow, some wheeled in, some leaned on canes and walkers, but they came, and they came loud. People carried signs. Let Mr. Blaine live free. Respect, not restraint. This man fought for you. Now, let him fight for himself. I was stunned, not because they cared, but because they remembered. Inside, I sat at a long table with a clipboard in front of me. Across from me, Jason, my son, sat with his attorney, pale and twitchy. Becky wasn't there. Guess she didn't want to get booed in heels. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice like gravel, called us to order. Jason's lawyer spoke first. He talked about decline, about safety, about preventative intervention. I sat there silent, letting every word pile up like bricks. Because bricks make walls, and I had a sledgehammer ready. Then it was my turn. No lawyer, just me. I stood, cleared my throat, and I told the story. Not just about Frank or the sandwich or the forced paperwork. I told her about the slow erasure of dignity, the way aging becomes a weapon others use to silence you. I read the voicemail. I showed the video Zach had filmed. I quoted Jason's own words back to him, the ones where he said, "Let's just get it over with." The courtroom was still. You could hear the fluorescent lights hum, and then I looked at the judge and said, "Your Honor, I might forget where I left my glasses, but I damn well remember who I am, and I'm not finished. Not yet." She blinked, nodded once, and ruled in my favor. Case dismissed. Guardianship petition denied. I walked out not just free, but furious in the most righteous way possible. Frank saw me on TV. He laughed so hard he choked on his sandwich. "They tried to bury you," he said, "but they forgot you were a seed." I liked that. A seed. Yeah, I wasn't dying. I was growing roots in new dirt. Zach kept asking if I'd do interviews, write a book, start a podcast. "Kid," I said, "I'm not trying to build a brand. I'm trying to build a world where old folks don't need one just to be left alone." Still, I agreed to one thing, a town hall. That Saturday, I spoke to a full room. Senior citizens, grandkids, nurses, lawyers, politicians even, all listening. I talked about how one kind act, one damn sandwich, turned me into a target, and how that says more about the system than it does about me. I ended with this. The one mistake people make after 70, believing they're finished, that they've used up their last good idea, their last fight, their last purpose. Don't believe it, because as long as you're breathing, you're not done. And as long as they underestimate you, You've got leverage. Jason and I eventually talked. A real talk. The kind that doesn't end in slammed doors or smug smiles. He apologized. For real this time. We're not best friends. We may never be. But he learned something. And so did I. I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't mean yelling louder. Sometimes it just means refusing to sit down when the world's already pulled out your chair. I still visit Frank every week. Still drink coffee too strong. Still walk the block every morning like I'm inspecting the earth to make sure it's still spinning. Because I'm still here. Still living. Not surviving. Not managing decline. Living. And I won't let anyone forget it.